The morning sun cast long shadows across the tarmac at Forward Operating Base Delta as Lieutenant Sarah Chen finished her pre-flight inspection of the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Her hands moved with practiced precision over every surface, checking control surfaces, weapon systems, and engine intakes. At 28, she had logged over 2,000 flight hours, but today felt different. Today, she would finally get the chance to prove what she had known all along, that skill in the cockpit had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with dedication, training, and raw talent. The briefing room buzzed with nervous energy as 12 pilots gathered around the tactical display. Colonel Martinez, their squadron commander, stood at the front with a grim expression. Intelligence reports indicated a significant enemy buildup just across the border, with hostile aircraft spotted conducting reconnaissance missions deep into friendly territory. What made this particularly concerning was the sophisticated nature of their equipment, advanced fighters that could pose a real threat to coalition forces. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Martinez began, his voice cutting through the chatter, "we have confirmed movement of 6 enemy aircraft in Sector 7. Initial reports suggest they're testing our response times and gathering intelligence on our defensive positions. Command has authorized immediate action to neutralize this threat before they can report back to their base." Sarah listened intently as the colonel outlined the mission parameters. The enemy aircraft were identified as advanced multi-role fighters, likely flown by experienced pilots with significant training. Intelligence suggested they were part of an elite squadron that had been causing problems for coalition forces across multiple theaters of operation. Their tactics were sophisticated, and their equipment was state-of-the-art. Major Williams, the flight lead, and a veteran with over 15 years of combat experience, would command the mission. Beside him sat Captain Rodriguez, known throughout the squadron for his aggressive flying style and impressive kill record. Lieutenant Peterson, fresh from advanced training but eager to prove himself, occupied the seat next to Sarah. The remaining pilots were all seasoned veterans with extensive combat experience. As the colonel continued his briefing, Sarah noticed the subtle glances and whispered comments from several of her colleagues. She had grown accustomed to this treatment over her 5-year career. Despite her excellent training scores, her spotless safety record, and her demonstrated proficiency in both air-to-air and air-to-ground operations, many still viewed her as an anomaly in the fighter pilot community. "Lieutenant Chen," Major Williams addressed her directly, "you'll be flying wingman position for Captain Rodriguez. Stay close, follow his lead, and don't take any unnecessary risks. We need you to focus on supporting the primary attack rather than trying to be a hero." Sarah nodded professionally, though she felt the familiar frustration building inside her. She had graduated second in her class from pilot training, earned top marks in weapons school, and completed multiple successful missions in previous deployments. Yet somehow, she always found herself relegated to supporting roles while less qualified pilots took the lead. The weapons briefing that followed revealed the serious nature of their mission. Each aircraft would carry a full complement of air-to-air missiles, both short-range heat seekers and longer-range radar-guided weapons. The enemy aircraft were equipped with similar armament and possessed electronic warfare capabilities that could complicate targeting and communication. During equipment check, Sarah methodically reviewed her aircraft systems. Her F-16 had been specially configured with the latest avionics upgrades, including an advanced radar system and improved electronic countermeasures. She had spent countless hours in the simulator mastering these systems, often staying late after official training ended to run additional scenarios. In the locker room, as pilots suited up in their flight gear, the conversation turned to speculation about the enemy's capabilities and intentions. Captain Rodriguez boasted about his previous encounters with similar aircraft, describing in detail how he had outmaneuvered an enemy pilot 6 months earlier. Lieutenant Peterson listened with wide-eyed admiration, clearly hoping to learn from the more experienced pilot's expertise. "The key," Rodriguez explained while adjusting his harness, "is to stay aggressive. These guys respect strength, and if you show any hesitation, They'll exploit it immediately. You have to hit them hard and fast, before they know what's happening. Sarah listened quietly while completing her own preparations. Her approach to combat flying differed significantly from Rodriguez's philosophy. She believed in careful planning, situational awareness, and using superior tactics rather than relying solely on aggression. Her training had emphasized the importance of understanding the battlefield completely before committing to any course of action. Walking across the tarmac toward their aircraft, the pilots moved with the confident stride of professionals preparing for dangerous work. Ground crews had been working since before dawn to ensure every system was functioning perfectly. Weapons technicians made final checks on missile systems, while mechanics completed last-minute inspections of engines and control surfaces. Sarah's crew chief, Staff Sergeant Johnson, met her at her aircraft with a detailed status report. Johnson had been maintaining fighter aircraft for over a decade and took personal pride in ensuring his pilots had the best possible equipment. He had worked on Sarah's plane personally, double-checking every system and making minor adjustments to optimize performance. "She's ready to fly, Lieutenant," Johnson reported with confidence. "All systems check out perfect, weapons are armed and tested, and I've made sure your radar is calibrated exactly the way you like it. Bring her back in one piece." The pre-flight inspection took on special significance given the mission's importance. Sarah checked every external surface, looking for any signs of damage or wear that might affect performance. She examined the weapons pylons, ensuring missiles were properly secured and safety pins removed. Her movements were methodical and thorough, reflecting years of training that had made these procedures second nature. Climbing into the cockpit, Sarah felt the familiar sense of coming home. The F-16's interior was cramped, but perfectly designed for combat operations. Every switch, button, and display was positioned within easy reach, allowing the pilot to maintain control even under extreme stress. She had memorized the location of every control and could operate the aircraft's systems without conscious thought. Engine startup proceeded smoothly as the powerful turbofan engine spooled up to operational speed. The aircraft's systems came online one by one: navigation, radar, weapons, communications. Sarah ran through her checklist with practiced efficiency, confirming that every component was functioning within normal parameters. Radio communications crackled to life as the flight prepared for departure. Air traffic control provided departure clearance and initial heading information. Weather reports indicated clear skies with excellent visibility, perfect conditions for aerial combat operations. Intelligence updates confirmed that enemy aircraft were still in the target area and showed no signs of withdrawing. As the formation taxied toward the runway, Sarah's mind focused on the mission ahead. She reviewed the tactical plan, considering various scenarios and potential enemy responses. Her training had taught her to think several steps ahead, anticipating problems before they developed and maintaining multiple options for any situation. The tower cleared them for takeoff, and Major Williams led the formation down the runway. The roar of 12 afterburning engines filled the morning air as the fighters accelerated rapidly. Sarah felt the familiar rush of acceleration as her aircraft left the ground and climbed steeply toward their assigned altitude. Formation flying required constant attention and precise control inputs. Each pilot maintained exact spacing and altitude, creating a disciplined aerial formation that could quickly adapt to changing tactical situations. Sarah held her assigned position with the skill that had impressed her instructors throughout training. As they climbed toward their operational altitude, radio chatter remained minimal and professional. Major Williams provided periodic updates on their progress and reminded the flight of their primary objectives. Intelligence continued monitoring enemy movements, reporting that hostile aircraft remained in the target area but had not yet detected the approaching coalition formation. The landscape below gradually gave way to mountainous terrain as they approached the border region. This area had been contested territory for months, with both sides conducting regular patrols and reconnaissance missions. The terrain provided natural concealment for aircraft operating at low altitude, but also created challenges for radar detection and missile engagement. Approaching the target area, tension increased noticeably throughout the formation. Pilots checked their weapons systems one final time and confirmed their understanding of engagement rules and tactical priorities. The enemy aircraft were identified as highly capable opponents with advanced training and equipment, making this encounter potentially more challenging than previous missions. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as they neared the point where contact with enemy forces seemed inevitable. Years of training had prepared her for this moment, but the reality of actual combat always carried uncertainties that no simulation could completely replicate. She reviewed her weapons options and confirmed her radar was operating at peak efficiency. Major Williams' voice came across the radio with calm authority. All flights were approaching the target area. Maintain formation and be ready for immediate action. Intelligence reports multiple contacts bearing 270, approximately 40 miles and closing. This is not a drill. The formation adjusted slightly, optimizing their approach angle and ensuring maximum tactical advantage. Each pilot understood their role in the upcoming engagement, but everyone also knew that combat situations rarely unfolded exactly according to plan. Flexibility and quick thinking would be essential for mission success. As they approached weapons range, Sarah's training took over completely. Her hands moved automatically across the controls, while her eyes scanned the radar display for signs of enemy aircraft. The sophisticated detection equipment in her F-16 was designed to identify threats at maximum possible range, providing crucial tactical information for the engagement ahead. The radio suddenly erupted with urgent communications as the formation's radar systems detected multiple contacts ahead. The enemy aircraft had finally appeared on their screens, and the real test was about to begin. Sarah knew that the next few minutes would determine not only the mission's success, but also whether she would finally have the opportunity to demonstrate her true capabilities as a combat pilot. In the distance, barely visible against the mountainous backdrop, 6 enemy aircraft maintained their patrol pattern, completely unaware that 12 of the world's most advanced fighter aircraft were approaching rapidly with hostile intent. The stage was set for an aerial confrontation that would test every pilot's skill, training, and determination. For Sarah, this represented the moment she had been preparing for throughout her entire career, the chance to prove that excellence in aerial combat was measured by ability, not assumptions. The radar warning receiver suddenly screamed to life as enemy aircraft locked onto the formation with their targeting systems. Major Williams immediately called for evasive action as 6 hostile fighters broke from their patrol pattern and turned aggressively toward the coalition aircraft. The peaceful morning sky instantly transformed into a 3-dimensional battlefield where split-second decisions meant the difference between survival and destruction. "Break right," Williams shouted over the radio as the first enemy missiles appeared on radar. The carefully organized formation scattered as pilots threw their aircraft into violent defensive maneuvers. G-forces slammed Sarah against her seat as she pulled her F-16 into a punishing turn, watching her radar screen track multiple incoming threats. Captain Rodriguez, who had been so confident during the briefing, found himself immediately overwhelmed by the enemy's aggressive tactics. His aircraft shuddered under the strain of extreme maneuvering as he attempted to avoid a heat-seeking missile that had locked onto his exhaust signature. His earlier boasts about previous combat experience seemed hollow as he struggled to maintain control while avoiding the incoming weapon. Sarah's training took over completely as she assessed the tactical situation with remarkable speed and clarity. While her fellow pilots reacted defensively to the enemy attack, she recognized an opportunity that others missed. The hostile aircraft had committed to their attack runs, leaving themselves vulnerable to a carefully planned counterattack if executed with precise timing. "Dragon 4 to Dragon Lead," she called over the radio, using her tactical call sign while maintaining perfect radio discipline despite the chaos around her. Enemy formation has exposed their left flank. Request permission to engage with vertical separation maneuver. Major Williams was too busy avoiding enemy fire to respond immediately. His F-16 twisted through the sky as he attempted to position himself for a defensive shot while staying ahead of pursuing enemy fighters. The enemy pilots were demonstrating skill levels that exceeded intelligence estimates, making this encounter far more challenging than originally anticipated. Without waiting for specific authorization, Sarah made a decision that would define her career. She had spotted a tactical weakness in the enemy formation that could be exploited, but only if action was taken within the next 30 seconds. Her years of training and natural flying ability allowed her to see patterns and opportunities that escaped other pilots, even experienced veterans. Rolling her aircraft inverted, Sarah pulled into a steep diving turn that took her below the main engagement area. This maneuver was extremely risky because it temporarily separated her from friendly forces, but it also positioned her perfectly to attack the enemy formation from an unexpected angle. Her F-16's advanced radar system tracked all 6 enemy aircraft, while her weapons computer calculated optimal firing solutions. The first enemy pilot never saw her coming. Sarah's initial missile launch was timed perfectly, striking the lead hostile aircraft just as he committed to an attack run against Captain Rodriguez. The enemy fighter exploded in a brilliant fireball that served as a dramatic announcement of her arrival in the fight. Her tactical display immediately updated, showing 5 remaining enemy aircraft. "Dragon 4 has Splash 1, she reported calmly over the radio, while simultaneously maneuvering to engage the second target. Her voice remained steady and professional despite the extreme circumstances, reflecting the mental discipline that separated exceptional pilots from merely competent ones. The enemy formation, suddenly finding themselves under attack from an unexpected direction, attempted to adapt their tactics. However, Sarah had anticipated their likely responses and positioned herself to exploit their confusion. Her second missile fired just 8 seconds after the first, tracking toward an enemy fighter that was attempting to climb away from the engagement area. Lieutenant Peterson, who had been struggling to maintain situational awareness throughout the battle, watched in amazement as Sarah's second target fell from the sky. Her attack had come from such an unusual angle that even the experienced enemy pilots seemed caught off guard. The tactical situation was shifting rapidly in favor of the coalition forces. "How is she doing that?" Peterson muttered over the radio, forgetting proper communication procedures in his excitement. Sarah's performance was unlike anything he had witnessed during training exercises or previous combat missions. She seemed to anticipate enemy movements before they happened, positioning her aircraft with uncanny precision. Sarah's third engagement demonstrated her mastery of advanced aerial tactics. Instead of pursuing the remaining enemy aircraft in a traditional chase, she used the terrain to her advantage. Flying low through a mountain valley, she disappeared from enemy radar while circling around to attack from yet another unexpected direction. This maneuver required extraordinary skill and intimate knowledge of her aircraft's capabilities. The enemy pilots, realizing they were facing an opponent of exceptional ability, attempted to coordinate their remaining forces for a concentrated attack. However, Sarah's unconventional approach had disrupted their command structure and created confusion within their formation. Communication between hostile aircraft became fragmented as they struggled to adapt to her tactics. Major Williams finally gained enough breathing room to observe Sarah's performance, and what he saw challenged every assumption he had made about her capabilities. Her flying was not just competent, it was inspired. She moved through 3-dimensional space with an artist's intuition, finding angles and opportunities that textbook tactics never addressed. "Dragon 4, what's your current ammunition status?" Williams asked, beginning to realize that Sarah might single-handedly turn the tide of this engagement. "3 missiles remaining, fuel at 70%, all systems nominal," Sarah responded while pulling her F-16 through another impossible-seeming maneuver. She had been tracking fuel consumption and weapons expenditure throughout the engagement, maintaining perfect awareness of her aircraft's status, even while conducting advanced combat operations. Her fourth kill came as the result of patient stalking rather than aggressive pursuit. Sarah had observed that one enemy pilot consistently turned left when under pressure, a small behavioral pattern that most pilots would never notice. She used this knowledge to predict his next move, positioning herself perfectly for a close-range shot that gave him no opportunity to evade. The remaining two enemy aircraft, now recognizing the serious threat Sarah represented, focused their attention on her specifically. This was exactly what she had hoped for, because drawing enemy fire away from her struggling colleagues gave them opportunities to regroup and contribute to the fight. Her tactical thinking extended beyond individual combat to encompass the entire battlefield. Captain Rodriguez, who had spent the first half of the engagement barely avoiding destruction, found himself with a clear shot at an enemy aircraft that was focused entirely on pursuing Sarah. His missile found its target, marking his first successful engagement of the mission. However, everyone understood that this opportunity existed only because of Sarah's tactical genius. "Thanks for the setup, Dragon 4, Rodriguez acknowledged over the radio, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine respect for his colleagues' abilities. The final enemy aircraft represented the greatest challenge, because its pilot was clearly the most experienced of the hostile group. This pilot had observed Sarah's tactics throughout the engagement and was adapting his own approach to counter her advantages. The resulting duel showcased the highest levels of aerial combat skill. For several minutes, Sarah and the enemy pilot maneuvered through a deadly dance that took them across miles of sky. Neither could gain a decisive advantage as they traded positions in a display of flying that would have been impossible for less skilled aviators. The engagement required every technique Sarah had learned throughout her career, plus improvisational skills that could not be taught. The breakthrough came when Sarah recognized that her opponent was slightly favoring his right side during high G turns, possibly indicating an old injury or equipment limitation. She exploited this weakness by forcing a series of rapid direction changes that gradually wore down his ability to maintain optimal positioning. Her patience and observational skills proved decisive. Her final missile launch ended the engagement with characteristic precision. The enemy pilot, despite his skill and experience, simply could not match Sarah's combination of technical proficiency, tactical awareness, and instinctive flying ability. His aircraft disappeared in a cloud of debris, marking the end of a confrontation that had showcased the very best of aerial combat. "Dragon 4 has Splash 6, Sarah reported with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the entire engagement. In just under 20 minutes, she had personally destroyed 6 enemy aircraft, while her colleagues managed to contribute 1 additional kill. The impossible had become reality through skill, determination, and exceptional training. The radio channels erupted with congratulations and amazement as the formation regrouped for the return flight to base. Pilots who had questioned Sarah's capabilities just hours earlier now spoke with genuine awe about her performance. She had not simply participated in the mission, she had dominated it in a way that redefined their understanding of what was possible. Major Williams's voice cut through the chatter with obvious emotion. "Dragon 4, that was the most incredible display of aerial combat I've witnessed in 20 years of flying. Outstanding work." As they formed up for the flight home, Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and relief. She had proven her capabilities beyond any possible doubt, but more importantly, she had protected her colleagues and completed the mission successfully. The respect she had always deserved was finally acknowledged by those who mattered most, her fellow pilots who understood the true difficulty of what she had accomplished. The return flight passed in relative quiet as each pilot processed what they had witnessed. Sarah's performance would be analyzed and studied for years to come, but the immediate impact was undeniable. She had earned her place among the elite pilots of her generation through demonstrated excellence rather than political correctness or social engineering. Intelligence reports later confirmed that the enemy aircraft they had encountered were indeed elite pilots with extensive combat experience. The fact that Sarah had outflown and outfought 6 of these opponents single-handedly made her achievement even more remarkable. Her success represented a triumph of skill over assumption, preparation over prejudice. The landing pattern at Forward Operating Base Delta had never felt more welcoming as 12 F-16s approached the runway in perfect formation. Sarah's hands remained steady on the controls, despite the exhaustion that was beginning to set in after the most intense 20 minutes of her flying career. Below them, ground crews were already preparing for their arrival, having monitored the mission's progress through radio communications. As her aircraft touched down on the familiar runway, Sarah felt the weight of what had just occurred. 6 enemy aircraft destroyed, her colleagues safely returned, and most importantly, she had finally demonstrated the capabilities that had always been questioned or overlooked. The smooth deceleration of her F-16 marked not just the end of a successful mission, but the beginning of a new chapter in her career. Taxiing toward the flight line, Sarah could see unusual activity around the squadron operations building. More personnel than normal were gathered outside, and several vehicles that typically remained parked were positioned as if preparing for some kind of ceremony. Word of the mission's outcome had clearly preceded their return, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and excitement. Staff Sergeant Johnson met her aircraft with his usual professional demeanor, but Sarah could detect something different in his expression. The crew chief, who had maintained her F-16 for the past 18 months, had heard the radio transmissions and understood exactly what his pilot had accomplished. His pride was evident as he guided her through the post-flight shutdown procedures. 6 confirmed kills, Lieutenant? Johnson asked with barely contained amazement as Sarah climbed down from the cockpit. In 20 minutes? That's going to be talked about for a very long time. The post-flight inspection revealed that Sarah's aircraft had performed flawlessly throughout the engagement. Despite the extreme maneuvering and high-stress combat operations, every system had functioned within normal parameters. Johnson's meticulous maintenance had provided her with a reliable platform that responded perfectly to every demand placed upon it. Walking across the tarmac toward the debriefing facility, Sarah found herself surrounded by colleagues whose attitudes had undergone a complete transformation. Captain Rodriguez, who had questioned her readiness for combat operations just hours earlier, approached with obvious humility and genuine respect. The change in his demeanor reflected a broader shift occurring throughout the squadron. "Sarah," Rodriguez said, using her first name for the first time since they had met, "I owe you an apology. What you did up there today, I've never seen anything like it. You saved my life at least twice and probably saved all of us. I was wrong about everything." Lieutenant Peterson, wide-eyed with admiration, peppered her with questions about specific maneuvers and tactical decisions. His eagerness to learn from her experience represented the kind of recognition Sarah had hoped for throughout her career. Acknowledgement based on demonstrated skill, rather than political correctness or social pressure. Her techniques would now be studied and emulated by other pilots seeking to improve their own capabilities. The formal debriefing session took place in the squadron's main briefing room, where detailed analysis of the mission would provide valuable lessons for future operations. Gun camera footage from multiple aircraft had recorded Sarah's performance from various angles, creating a comprehensive record of aerial combat techniques that would be studied at the highest levels of military aviation. Colonel Martinez entered the briefing room with an expression of barely contained excitement. As squadron commander, he had witnessed many successful missions throughout his career, but Sarah's performance represented something extraordinary. The preliminary reports he had received suggested that her achievement would rank among the most significant individual combat accomplishments in recent military history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Martinez began, "what we witnessed today represents the very best of military aviation. Lieutenant Chen's performance exceeded every expectation and demonstrated combat skills of the highest caliber. This mission will be studied and remembered for decades to come." The detailed mission analysis revealed the full extent of Sarah's tactical genius. Her use of terrain, timing, and three-dimensional maneuvering had created opportunities that traditional combat doctrine never anticipated. Each of her 6 kills resulted from calculated decisions that demonstrated not just flying skill, but strategic thinking that operated several steps ahead of her opponents. Intelligence officers who analyzed the engagement identified numerous tactical innovations that Sarah had improvised during combat. Her use of vertical separation to attack from unexpected angles, her patient stalking of individual targets, and her ability to draw enemy fire away from vulnerable colleagues showed a level of combat thinking that exceeded textbook training. Major Williams, who had initially assigned Sarah to a supporting role, publicly acknowledged his error in judgment. His comments during the debriefing session demonstrated the kind of professional integrity that defined the best military leaders: willingness to admit mistakes and recognize excellence wherever it appeared. "I assigned Lieutenant Chen to a wingman position because I underestimated her capabilities," Williams stated clearly. "Today's mission proves that excellence in aviation has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with skill, training, and natural ability. Sarah has earned her place among the finest combat pilots I've ever flown with." The technical analysis of Sarah's aircraft systems revealed performance parameters that impressed even experienced maintenance personnel. Her management of fuel consumption, weapon systems, and electronic countermeasures during high-stress combat showed a level of aircraft control that demonstrated mastery of every aspect of fighter operations. Word of Sarah's achievement spread rapidly throughout the military aviation community. Within hours of the mission's completion, her performance was being discussed at air bases around the world. Combat footage from the engagement would soon be incorporated into advanced training curricula, ensuring that her techniques would influence pilot education for generations. The immediate impact within her own squadron was profound and lasting. Pilots who had previously viewed Sarah as a diversity initiative now sought her advice on combat tactics and flying techniques. Her opinions on mission planning and tactical strategy suddenly carried weight that had been denied to her despite years of excellent performance. 3 days after the mission, Sarah received notification that she had been recommended for immediate promotion and transfer to an elite test pilot program. Her combat performance had demonstrated the kind of exceptional ability that military leadership actively sought for their most challenging assignments. The recognition represented everything she had worked toward throughout her career. Staff Sergeant Johnson found Sarah in the hangar, conducting a thorough inspection of her F-16 systems. Even after achieving the greatest success of her career, she maintained the same attention to detail and professional standards that had always characterized her approach to flying. Her dedication to excellence remained unchanged despite the dramatic shift in how others perceived her. "Lieutenant," Johnson said with obvious pride, "I've been maintaining fighter aircraft for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like what you accomplished up there. You took a machine I prepared and turned it into something magical. It was an honor to support that mission." The squadron's culture began changing in subtle but important ways, as Sarah's achievement forced everyone to re-examine their assumptions about capability and performance. Younger pilots, particularly female aviators, found new inspiration in her example. Her success proved that excellence would ultimately be recognized and rewarded, regardless of obstacles or prejudices. Captain Rodriguez approached Sarah in the squadron ready room, carrying a thick folder of mission analyses and tactical studies. His transformation from skeptical colleague to eager student represented the broader changes occurring throughout the unit. The folder contained his detailed notes on her combat techniques, which he hoped to incorporate into his own flying. Sarah, I've been studying the gun camera footage from yesterday's mission, Rodriguez explained. Your use of vertical separation in the initial attack, I've never seen that maneuver performed in actual combat. Would you be willing to walk me through your thought process? I'd like to understand how you identified that opportunity. The request for mentorship marked a complete reversal from their previous relationship. Sarah found herself in the unexpected position of teaching more experienced pilots advanced combat techniques that she had developed through careful study and natural intuition. Her role within the squadron evolved from questioned newcomer to respected expert. Lieutenant Peterson had compiled an entire notebook of questions about Sarah's flying techniques and tactical philosophy. His eagerness to learn reflected the broader recognition that she possessed knowledge and skills that could benefit the entire squadron. The formal barriers that had previously limited her influence were dissolving rapidly. When you made that climb after the third kill, Peterson asked during an impromptu discussion session, how did you know the enemy pilot would turn left instead of right? That seemed like an impossible prediction to make. Sarah's explanation revealed the depth of her observational skills and tactical thinking. She had noticed subtle patterns in the enemy pilot's behavior that most aviators would never detect, then used that information to predict his responses with deadly accuracy. Her ability to read opponents during combat represented an almost intuitive understanding of aerial warfare. The formal recognition ceremony took place exactly 1 week after the mission, with representatives from multiple levels of military command in attendance. Sarah stood at attention in her dress uniform as Colonel Martinez read the citation for her Distinguished Flying Cross, awarded for extraordinary achievement while engaged in aerial combat against a numerically superior enemy force. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's exceptional skill, tactical brilliance, and heroic actions resulted in the destruction of 6 enemy aircraft and the successful completion of a critical combat mission, the citation read. Her performance represents the highest traditions of military aviation and serves as an inspiration to all who serve. The medal ceremony marked the public recognition of what Sarah had always known about her own capabilities. The physical award was meaningful, but the transformation in how her colleagues viewed her was even more significant. She had earned respect through demonstrated excellence rather than political correctness or social engineering. Following the ceremony, Sarah received orders for immediate assignment to the Fighter Weapons School, where she would train other pilots in advanced combat techniques. The position represented one of the most prestigious assignments available to fighter pilots, typically reserved for those with exceptional records and proven leadership abilities. Her final conversation with Staff Sergeant Johnson took place beside the F-16 that had carried her through her historic mission. The aircraft would soon be assigned to another pilot, but Johnson promised that her achievement would be remembered every time someone flew that particular machine. Her legacy was now permanently connected to the unit's history. "You changed everything, Lieutenant," Johnson observed with obvious emotion. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. You proved that skill and determination matter more than anything else. That's a lesson this squadron will never forget." As Sarah prepared to leave for her new assignment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Years of questioning, doubt, and relegated roles had been erased by 20 minutes of exceptional performance. She had proven that excellence transcends assumptions and that capability cannot be limited by prejudice. The morning she departed Forward Operating Base Delta, 12 F-16s performed a formation flyover in her honor. Her former colleagues, who had once questioned her presence in their ranks, now recognized her as one of the finest combat pilots they had ever known. The demonstration served as both farewell and acknowledgement of her permanent place in squadron history. Sarah's story would be told and retold throughout the military aviation community for decades to come. Her achievement represented more than individual success. It proved that exceptional ability could overcome any obstacle when supported by dedication, training, and unwavering determination. She had not just succeeded, she had redefined what was possible for an entire generation of pilots who would follow in her path.